Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dale, Brian Kelly, them LSU Tigers. They are starting to heat up in the transfer portal. And we kind of said a couple weeks ago, this was going to be one of those teams to watch, being really active in the portal. We're about a week in, and it's about as active as it gets, right? We talked about Bauer Sharp yesterday, Jakeem Jackson this morning, and now Saturday night, Barion Brown. This was, to me, what sounded like LSU's number one target at the wide receiver position. My personal favorite wide receiver that was in the transfer portal. So, Dill, not only do I really love the player of Barion Brown, a guy that was very productive at Kentucky with horrible quarterback play, but more importantly, I love the fit with this LSU offense. One of the things we talked about yesterday was you look at Joe Sloan and how he wants this offense to look. He wants to get his speed in space. He wants to get his playmakers in space. I didn't think LSU had enough wide receivers that really were game changers with the football in their hands. You go back to Malik Neighbors in 2023. Again, he gets all the credit for being an elite route runner, which he certainly was. Nobody talked about what that kid could do with the football in his hands as well. Barion Brown brings that back to LSU in 2025, can stretch the field vertically, can change a game with the football in his hands. He's a 10-4-9 guy in the 100-meter dash coming out of high school, and he looks that fast when he puts on a helmet and shoulder pads as well. When you look the fastest in the SEC, you know you're special. Barion Brown, every time I watched him at Kentucky, was clearly the fastest football player on the field. Great player, great fit, fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, to the LSU fans, it's been a blast for the boys. And the amount of support y'all have shown as we've breaking down these commitments, it means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly in the comment section. Dill, without further ado, I'll give you the T-box here. Barion Brown, how we feeling?
I mean, it was huge because you kind of look in getting into this LSU team, like who was going to be that guy to replace what Kyron Lacey replaced, who replaced it from Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Like, you probably needed that number one guy because, like, I like Chris Hilton. I like what he adds. I certainly like what Aaron Anderson was doing last year, especially working from the slot. But who was going to be that boundary guy who could rack up or get near that 1,000-yard mark on the season and be that kind of the consistent target? As much as you talk about Barion Brown's athleticism and ability to stretch the field, really, really clean route runner as well. Just, I think, is that number one guy. And again, those are hard to always find in the portal because you see some guys with some skill and they have a unique skill set perhaps, but just finding that pure number one guy, like I'm kind of surprised he's not going to the draft right now, frankly. So you get him back to LSU is huge.
we had 2 weeks ago, we had that discussion, and we're talking about wide receiver. We're Michigan fans, so we're talking about wide receivers that could enter the transfer portal. And I mentioned Barion Brown. You said, what do you mean? He's going to go to the NFL draft. Well, he's not. He entered the transfer portal, and LSU goes out and grabs him. Dill, what kind of makes me so excited is he's a proven commodity in the SEC as well. Like, he put up some really impressive numbers with below average quarterback play. You look at a guy like CJ Daniels last year, like we were very excited. Like that film from Liberty and Conference USA was elite from CJ Daniels. Not a knock on the kid, but it clearly that the jump from Conference USA to the SEC was big. And he wasn't the dominant player we remember at Liberty. Barion Brown's been dominant, but he's been dominant in the SEC at Kentucky. So you feel pretty damn good that he's going to be dominant at LSU too in a system that, again, just fits what he can do. And one other thing, talk about like player development. Like Barion Brown is still a guy that I think can get better in some of those categories, especially as a route runner, because the movement skills and speed are off the charts. You see that when he has the football in his hands. Can we translate that more to a route runner? Cortez Hankton, one of the best in the business. What happens if Barion Brown gets better heading into 2025? That's what excites me the most.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think we've always got to see him just be running routes because, like, you look at how disjointed that Kentucky offense felt. Like, they didn't have quarterbacks who could play on rhythm like that and play like the way LSU plays, where you saw Malik Neighbors develop as a route runner over his time there. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that the offense was a well-oiled machine while he was there. I mean, they had it really humming. Again, with Nussmeier coming back, you'd like to think they can kind of keep it rolling a little bit and keep that wide receiver development. And then we might be able to just see, frankly, a different version of Barion Brown because he's got all the skills I think he needs to be a
Yes.
really elite number one player at
Yeah.
wideout.
I mean, if Barion Brown's just a player that we've seen from the last 3 years, I think he's the wide receiver one. What if he gets better? You're talking about what I think could be a first round NFL draft pick. Now, you won't find many people higher on Barion Brown than I am. Dill, let's talk about this morning because we didn't get a chance to. Jakeem Jackson. My take on it is yes, he's an unproven. He hasn't played a ton of football. We obviously know what he was coming out of high school. The thing that makes me feel the best about it is Corey Raymond. Like, Corey Raymond not only recruited him to Florida, but worked with him while he was a true freshman at Florida in 2023. Look, Corey Raymond wouldn't be bringing in Jakeem Jackson if he didn't think he could play. And so that makes me feel good. And at the end of the day, he started early for Florida and then got banged up. It wasn't great. But if you're LSU, you're trying to throw in as much competitive talent and depth into that defensive back room, and hopefully Blake Baker and Corey Raymond can figure it out. You can't say no to adding a guy like Jakeem Jackson into that cornerback room.
Because you look, I mean, the physical tools are exactly what you kind of want. Like, not
Yes.
overly big, if you will, but physical. Doesn't really have a problem with that with wide receivers. Again, it's just refining the little things, the ball skills, the kind of play recognition, and kind of understanding where he's supposed to be and how to position himself. So those things, like, again, you can certainly see a path to coaching him. It's not like they're like hard deficiencies, if you will. Like, oh, well,
Yeah.
this guy's just not fast enough to play
Look,
college
look,
football.
I'm just short and slow. You can't Blake Baker can't do nothing with me. Like, Jakeem Jackson's a ball of clay that you can mold and potentially a good cornerback. And
And it's certainly not guaranteed in the way that, like, maybe you'd want it to be, but, like,
agreed.
he's a guy you add into a room, like, he's a bit of a lottery ticket, I feel like, at this point. If it works out, it's gonna work out in a really good way, and you need a couple of those, frankly, in college football, especially in today's game.
It's worth noting that he did win the job coming out of fall camp for Florida. Like, he was the starter to open the season before the injury. And although the sample size wasn't great from Jakeem Jackson when he was playing, like, he had to have been looking decent in practice because there were some good defensive backs in that Florida Gators room. And so for Jakeem Jackson to win one of those spots, I think means something too. Dill, I don't think Barion Brown is going to be the last addition to this LSU team at the wide receiver position. I want to talk about two other players. Let's talk about Micah Hudson, and I'm a Micah Hudson guy. When Micah Hudson was coming out as a senior in the 2024 class, I put him in that category with Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams. Did he work out like those three did as true freshmen? No. But from the high school stuff, I think he, from a capability level, is up there. And if you can get Micah Hudson, same thing we talked with Barion Brown, get him in with a wide receiver coach that I regard as probably the best in the business, I am fired up to see what Micah Hudson could do at LSU going into year two, because this kid has all the traits in the world. The high school film was a blast to watch. And then Dill, the last guy, Nick Anderson. And what better one to Barion Brown, kind of elite with the ball in his hands, the speed, short area quickness. All right, maybe I'm going to make the comp Brian Thomas. We want to inject the Brian Thomas into the room, a guy that can work vertically down the field. Nick Anderson would be your guy. Now Nick Anderson to me is the sample size is one small, didn't play a ton as a freshman, balled out as a sophomore, averaged over 20 yards per catch for over 750 yards, then got banged up and didn't really play for Oklahoma in 2024. So there's only one season of Nick Anderson being a guy. But when you did see him, 6'4", 215, working vertically down the field just about as good as anybody in the country. What excites me about Nick Anderson is, can you add a little bit more to his game? To me right now, maybe a little bit of a one-trick pony. Like, just that I'm a big body that can work vertically down the field. I can't really do much else. Can you get that part of his game out of him at LSU? That would be really intriguing. He's going to be on campus.
Also put some competition with him and Chris Hilton Jr., because you didn't get the best version of Chris Hilton Jr. this year, I don't think. And I think he kind of had his role as being the deep ball guy, never really materialized exactly. Health, lack of consistency with the play.
Yep.
I mean, those two, I think together, like, one of them's got to take the job, or hopefully takes the job, takes the reins, and really steps into that role of being the guy who's just, all right, this is our guy who's going to attack down the field and put a lot of pressure on defenses, because that was one, I think, issue. You could probably argue that they didn't have that Brian Thomas role. because frankly, Chris Hilton Jr. didn't exactly step up to the plate.
Yeah, you can never have enough difference makers at the wide receiver position. LSU knows that more than anybody. When you have two NFL guys, first round NFL guys, and Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, your offense, for lack of better terms, becomes almost impossible to stop. I think LSU is going to try to get back to that in 2025. And look, is Garrett Nussmeier the electric factory that Jaden Daniels was? No. But if you give him the weapons, there's no doubt in my mind he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And I think now you got Nuss coming back, wide receivers are going to want to go play for him. I'm really excited to see what LSU can do. Again, Dill, they have some resources put away. Brian Kelly, just what? If we matching $1 million to the collective. I mean, the things are going to me in the right direction for this LSU program. We'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.